China continues to spy on the world. We all know this, the spy balloons, the interference in our labs. All sorts of questions are being raised about China's interference. And now it's, of course, about our election process here in Canada. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Jamil, Jivani, and Brian Lilley. Brian, we have unpacked a bit about what we know about China's interference in our elections, in the last couple of elections. A fantastic reporting by the Globe and Mail. We have discussed it, but there's new information. There's additional information that we now know, including that Justin Trudeau is saying we shouldn't be asking questions about this.
Yeah, and it started at the House of Commons Procedures and House Affairs Committee. The Conservatives moved a motion that said, okay, we're already studying allegations of interference in the 2019 election. We want to expand it to the 2021 election. That motion to expand it included saying, we want the PMO to produce documents. Now, they wasn't going to release the documents into public without being redacted. That's, the Liberals claimed that. That's not true. The motion was very clear on that. So they wanted production of documents, which would have given them great insight into what the PMO knows. They wanted to call Katie Telford, Trudeau's chief of staff. They wanted to call senior cabinet ministers. The Liberals blocked everything but saying, we'll expand it to 2021. But you can't have papers and you can't see the senior staff or the senior ministers because you're undermining our democracy by doing this. And I saw that at committee and I thought, that's weird. And then the very next day, Trudeau's asked about China's interference in the 2021 election. And again, not being outraged at China, his first reaction was to say he wants the whistleblowers. He said, the Conservatives are playing games and we're going to undermine our democracy by talking about this. This is what China wants. No, China wants to interfere in our elections and we need to know more about it. It's being hidden from the public. The government knows what's going on. And it really looks like they don't want to release anything because they're benefiting.
It's in the best interest of China, Jamil, to have a weak prime minister in Canada. Justin Trudeau has never stood up to the Chinese Communist Party. He's never pushed back against anything, including the recent incidents of the spy balloon, which has been floating around our country for some time. Questions about COVID are still out there and its origins. China has never been held accountable for the lab interferences that we've had in this country. So they like having Justin Trudeau at the helm. They don't want to have a hawkish conservative government in there who would be far more strong and resilient against Chinese incursion. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, does this, like, Trudeau is saying what he's saying for a reason? Is it because he's talking to certain constituents? He knows certain demographics will vote Liberal in the next election. What's his play by downplaying this so much?
Yeah, it's a great question, Adrienne. And certainly, I think Justin Trudeau and his team are alarmed by the fact that there is conversation happening about this in the media across the political spectrum. The Globe and Mail, the Toronto Sun, the National Post, lots of different outlets are starting to ask questions. I think this is a losing issue for the Liberals. One, because, as you said, they don't like to poke the bear in the Chinese Communist Party. They like to keep China happy as much as they can. And then the other issue is that it starts to cast some doubt on these election victories that the Trudeau Liberals have won in the last two federal elections. They certainly don't want people questioning that and wondering about the legitimacy of some of those seats being won. So I understand from their self-interested point of view why they would like to avoid this kind of scrutiny. The concern I have is, and I think every Canadian should be worried about this, when politicians, in particular our federal government, tell us that we shouldn't ask questions, that we shouldn't talk about something. It's dangerous to discuss something happening in our country affecting our elections. That's very odd. And it feels like gaslighting. It feels like psychological manipulation. We've seen this with some of the big news stories of the last few years, including some of the decisions made around the COVID pandemic, where debate, dialogue is somehow cast as a dangerous activity. And I think we have to be very careful about politicians trying to do that to us, because we deserve to be able to ask them questions. And then, of course, the other thing that's coming out of this is their attempt to use Trump as this like smear that we're all supposed to be afraid of. So if you question what's happening in the election, if you question the relationship that the Chinese Communist Party has had with some of this election interference, that somehow you're like Donald Trump and conservatives should be deathly afraid of being told we're being like Donald Trump. This is a tactic that Trudeau has used very well. He constantly campaigns against Republicans, not Canadian conservatives. And we have to accept this is part of his playbook and not be scared by it or pushed off course.
Brian, I'm going to give you the last word. I don't know if Canadians are going to buy into the fear and the rhetoric, because the rhetoric doesn't match the reality, right? And I think that's sort of where that whole notion of whether you are not allowed to question this, you're not allowed to discuss this, I'm going to go after the whistleblowers versus the perpetrators. I don't think that makes Canadians comfortable, frankly. But I want to just add one more layer to this.
Okay.
We talked about, it's in China's best interest to have a weak prime minister in Canada. It's also China's interest to have a weak president of the United States, which we do have in Joe Biden right now. And we can, litigate all the conflicts of interest that the Biden family has with China and all of those things from his son and all those extraneous issues. But now we have the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Billions of dollars, soldiers, weaponry, materials going over there. China is now saying that they want to find the path to peace. China is trying to put themselves out there as the peacemaker. But on the sidelines of that, they may very well provide Russia with weapons. So I know this is, the geopolitical reality of what we're facing. But to me, it's because there is no strong world leader that is tamping China down. So they just run amok unabated.
They don't get pushback in many parts of the world. I was surprised that the Americans eventually shot down the balloon that floated across the country. I'm surprised that they then went on to shoot down a bunch of hobby balloons, thinking that they were Chinese spy balloons. But China is becoming more belligerent because governments are less likely to stand up to them, whether it is on our election interference, whether it is on their espionage, which goes well beyond politics and is deeply rooted in stealing business secrets and manufacturing secrets and industrial espionage. They don't receive the pushback that they should. They did during the Trump administration, when Stephen Harper was in office. They did for a while, but back then the Canadian business community wrapped Stephen Harper's knuckles for getting in their way. So, we do need to have strong leadership. Erin O'Toole was extremely strong on China. So was Kenny Chiu. So was Bob Soraya. This is why they were targeted by the Chinese government to shut up critics, make sure that the critics aren't there and China's happy. That shouldn't be how we decide our elections in this country, though.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below, and go to thetorontosun.com and hit that subscribe button. You'll find more videos like this and coverage you will not find anywhere else.